Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Last week, we had the question and answer session, and I don't remember the question, but the question is something like, is this thing required for salvation? Something like that. So my question to you today is, are offerings required for salvation? I will not answer it, of course. It's up to you to answer that. Well, because I may create a controversy, but anyway, I'm here to support the teaching that we need to give offerings. Most of the messages we have received so far were in the past, so many messages of offering, and we can see that in the Apostle Paul discussing about supporting the ministry, supporting a church. But this time I would like to turn to the book of John, 3rd John, if we turn to the book of John, the beloved apostle. We begin in verse 5. We read here, "Beloved, it is faithful thing you do in all your efforts for these brothers, strangers, as they are," in verse 6, "who testify to your love before the church. You will do well to send on their journey in a matter worthy of God." And verse 7, "For they have gone out for the sake of the name, accepting nothing from the Gentiles." And the key verse here is verse 8, "Therefore we ought to support people like this, that they may be fellow workers for the truth." Actually, 3rd John is speaking of two men, Gaius and Diotrephes. And Gaius is the good man, and John wrote Gaius a letter commending him of what he did, of being hospitable to the workers or to the itinerant ministers preaching the gospel in several areas, and they need to rest, they need to have some supplies to eat, to have lodging. And Gaius was the one who did this thing, providing help, assistance, comfort to these workers or ministers of the gospel. Now, he mentioned also about Diotrephes, but I just speak a little bit later on. The first is, the keywords I have mentioned is, "Therefore we ought." What does ought mean? Well, I look at the dictionary, and one of the meaning of ought is a duty, is an obligation for us who believe or profess to believe in Christ. It's a duty, an obligation to support people like this, or people who work in the ministry, that we may be fellow workers for the truth. Now, what is this truth that John is talking about? You think for a moment, what is this truth about? Why did Diotrephes rejected or didn't accept the people sent by John to the church? Or probably Diotrephes, it's not clear what position he has in the church, but it's like he was the leader. He did not accept those ministers sent by John. So he may be against the truth. What is the truth about? Now, if we go to the second letter of John, John again is speaking of the truth here in 2nd John, speaking about a true teaching, a true doctrine. And John was telling the people in that church, do not accept anybody or anyone who do not bring this truth to your church. So to John, truth is very important. And if we go to the book of Jude, again, in verse 3, mention about contending for the faith once delivered for the saints. What is that faith? It's a body of doctrine, a true teaching that the apostles were fighting for. Why? Why did they fight for the truth? Because at that time, there were already false teachers abounding in the churches who already entered the church and preaching false teaching. So that's why John is emphasizing the truth. Now, what is this truth? Now, this just digress from the subject of offering, but the answer is very simple. If we go to the book of John, in verse 14. We read here in John and verse 14, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen His glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth." And what is this truth then? It's very simple. Brethren, it is Jesus Christ who is the truth. In chapter 14, we don't need to turn there, when Thomas asked a question regarding the way, what did Jesus say or answer? "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So, it's time for the offerings, and we now take the offerings for this afternoon.